very deep and very detailed. Because of this specific reason, I will not take her time. I would like to give the floor as soon as possible to Dr. Hannah. However, I also would like to talk, and I like talking as well. The project writing and development is really unique topic, and I'm sure that this is one of the like yesterday the second practical topic of our online volunteering that you are going to also start to just pass this stage from the talking to walking part, to understand the nature of how to design a project and what are the important steps and which part is taking more time in order for you to apply any kind of fund, and what are the general aspects that you have to know from scratch. I'm sure that Dr. Hannah Albana is going to try her best to give all information in a very limited time. And we were just discussing with her, normally we used to conduct such kind of training courses in 2 days. However, since we have seen the amazing motivation and passion of our young volunteers, it is a good opportunity and great opportunity to step in this important topic within the valuable experience of Dr. Hannah Albana. She has been navigating and supervising different programs internationally, and also specifically with regions within her organization lately. I'm sure that her information and her experiences are going to give you more details and more information. And please enjoy the session. I will be enjoying the session by myself, and I will be here to assist you, Dr. Hannah, for any kind of processes, since I'm really also interested in topic as well. Please, Dr. Hannah, floor is yours, and you can start. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seren. Thank you so much. And yes, as you mentioned, it's a huge topic, and usually we run such a training in 2 days or 3 days program. But I think we're gonna try to summarize it as we can. And later on, all the materials that I've already shared, maybe all participants could look at these materials, maybe enhance their knowledge and whatever. I believe always it's the person who would really, if you want to learn more, he can rely on these materials. Yes, he can attend such sessions and seminars, but also it's his responsibility to read more about these materials, to see best practices of developing such proposals, and by practice he would be able to maybe run such projects and develop his own proposals or his own work plans for the projects that he's working in. So let's start. So the seminar today, as mentioned earlier, it's going to be project development and project writing. First, we start with giving a few information about what we're gonna try to cover in this seminar. So first, we will have an awareness of the importance of applying good practice project management in projects of any size. Also, we're gonna have an overview of project development and project writing. In order to help us with our work, either if we are working in the charity sector or the non-governmental sector, or we are fresh graduates and we would like to be more involved in voluntary work or run projects for our community. So it will be helpful for us to see the exact process and the cycle of how we develop such projects, starting from the basics, which is the analysis of this community and the analysis of the stakeholders and the problems and all these things, and moving forward into developing our work plan and how we're going to tackle, and later on into developing the budget, the risk plans, the sustainable plan. So it's a kind of a whole circle and a more kind of steps which we have to follow in order to later on at the end achieve what we want to achieve our ultimate goal. So first, we need to learn first the definitions. Always, as I mentioned maybe previously, if some of you attended my last sessions, always I like to, whatever seminar I'm delivering, I like to give the participants the definitions or the academic principles of any work that we are doing. Yes, we are in the non-governmental sector. We are more practical people, practitioners, but it's always good to rely on these academic principles and the academic definitions so we can understand more about these terms and these definitions. So first, if we define a project, so what is a project? A project is a unique process consisting of a set of coordinated and controlled activities with start and finish dates, undertaken to achieve an objective conforming to specific requirements, including constraints of time, cost, quality, and resources. So as we see in this definition, we have we kind of gathered the whole principles that any successful project should have. So we have a specific objective that we want to achieve. We have a time frame. We have resources. We have to make sure to have the best quality in this project, and of course we have a specific resources that we need to rely on. Either it's going to be resources from the community itself or resources from our side as an organization. So kind of it gather the whole principles that we need to take it into consideration when we run or we start thinking about any project we want to develop. So a project, it's a kind of planned set of activities. It should have has a scope of work, and as we mentioned, we have constraints, and these constraints related to time, cost, quality, and resources. Something also, another term that we need to be familiar with is the project management. What do we mean by project management? Project management, the planning, scheduling, controlling, monitoring, evaluating, and reporting of project activities to meet project objectives. So this also something that always we need to know what we mean by project management and managing these projects. That means that I need to look at different aspects of this project. It's not just about planning my project and implementing my projects. We have certain steps that it starts, yes, from planning and then doing other steps in order to make sure that I have a holistic approach, and I have a holistic picture of the whole project that I want to implement, and which ends, of course, with the reporting, lessons learned, and all these things that I need to either do it for myself or for the donor agency that fund this project and they give me the grant for this project. So this would take us to the next slide. When we're talking about project management, this would take us to something what we call, what is project development. Project development also is a process of identifying solutions, and here mainly we are talking more in the development sector and international, either it's international development or we're talking about local development. So when we say project development, is more about the process of identifying solutions for clearly stated problems and structuring them in a way that makes them implementable. Okay, so when we say starting with a problem, and maybe in later slide we will see how exactly this is important and this is major in our work as project managers or people who are working in developing such projects and such proposals. We should start from the beginning, and we should follow the steps, the exact steps, which I'm gonna show it to you now while we are trying to develop our project. So should we say, so project design cycle should be utilized for project development. Comprehensive project design starts with a need assessment and follows with a diagnostic concerning causes and consequences of identified problems. And we can see this later on. And based on this analysis, appropriate strategies and interventions should be identified and selected. So how we start with this project design cycle? So project design, basic project design can be mainly broken into two main parts. First, understanding problems and designing solution. So the first part, as we mentioned, understanding problems. And this is why any project we're talking about, whatever project we are implementing, either in the environmental project, economical project, social, whatever project we are dealing with, the first stage should be about understanding what problems we have in this community related this aspect of or this issue. And then we start to design solutions that we think will help us to solve this problem or to tackle this issue. So this would start always, we start with the what we call the situation analysis. And when we mention understanding problems, it's not about just doing the analysis about this problem. No, it starts with other kind of analysis in order, as I mentioned, to give us a clear idea about the community that we are dealing with. And that's why underlying these two components is a cycle. As I mentioned, it's a kind of cycle consists of the following steps. The first step in our in designing or designing this project, it will be the situation analysis. And when we say situation analysis, there's another analysis that comes under or part of this analysis, which we have the needs assessment. And later on, I'm going to tell you more detailed information how we can run such analysis, what would be the methods and methodologies that we could use in order to run such analysis. So we have, as I mentioned, the need assessments, stakeholder, and problem analysis. And also with regards to problem analysis, we have techniques which would help us to identify these problems and decide on exactly which problem I want to tackle. We have, of course, part of this analysis, we have the assessment of the organizational capacity, assessment of the resources that we have within our organizations. And also in later slides, I'm going to see exactly how I could do such analysis, identifying my strengths, identifying my weaknesses. All these things will be mentioned in later slides, but this is very important for me while developing this project to know exactly who am I and what capabilities I have in order to run such project. This is why this is very much why this is important, because whenever I'm writing my proposal or wherever I'm writing my project, I need to mention there would be a section where I will mention more about my organization. So I need to really understand what is the resources and the strengths that I have, which kind of relate to this problem that I'm talking about. Any previous work that I did, any previous projects that I did in that part. So I need to include information about myself, about my organization, about our work, about our objectives, and how all these projects and our principles and our aim relates to this problem. That's why it's very important to do this task at the beginning of any project and to understand more about our organization and how this relates to this problem in specific. Then after we do all the needed assessments, and really I want to highlight the importance of such step, and this would consider the main part of the main important component of any project that I want to implement. This step would help me later on to know exactly what I want to do, what activities I want to implement, who's the stakeholders, who's the partners that would be involved in my project. So this is really a very important step in my project cycle, and I need to give it like a good time in order to make sure that I covered all the aspects that relates to the problem that I want to study, or at least the issue that I'm covering. Then after we cover all the analysis and we do all the assessments, we start with the next stage, what we call project design and planning framework. And also we're gonna have a few slides to tell you more exactly how I'm gonna how I do the planning process, how I put all these information that I collected during these assessments into a work plan that would really describe the projects that I'm gonna implement. The next step would be the project budget, and this is a very important aspect of my project. Project budget, it's as I mentioned, it would I maybe really doing a very good assessment and a very good analysis would help me also to identify what is the resources that I would need, and how would I would really plan and develop my budget. So the first stage, it really reflects on the work later on. That's why I always say to all the participants in any program, really 80% of your time should be focused on this part, the analysis part, identifying all these aspects, and then later on would be 20% on the implementation. As long as you have a clear idea of what exactly you want to accomplish, it will be easy to implement your project or your work and to have all those partners on board. So after we have the budget, after we identify the budget and the resources that we want to have, we have then the other stage, which is the project monitoring and evaluation plan. Also, we will know more about how I can develop such a plan. And then the final step with any project would be the final evaluation and dissemination of lessons learned. And this is also a very important, especially for us organizations who are working in the development sector. It's very important for us and for others to share such information and to have these lessons learned. So either we're talking about positive things, or it's something that we failure, even if it's a failure stories, we should have them there, so we would know and we would rely on these documents for further for the development of the same projects. It could be a second stage of the same project, or it could be other projects that somehow related or not related, but it's very important always to have this documentation of the final evaluation and the lessons learned. And as I mentioned, sometimes these things we do it for ourselves, but usually we should have such report to submit it to the donors if we're talking about projects that we got fund to implement it. So this is a very important aspect we need to consider whenever we are talking about development projects. Something that we need to also consider is that each step of the cycle is equally important and should not be skipped. Okay, this is something very important that always we should keep it in mind. And for example, and here in this slide, I'm giving you the figure on the right hand side. It's the project design cycle where it has all these steps, as you can see, and it's a kind of cycle because, as I mentioned, each step of this design cycle rely on the previous one. And that's why we make it, or we put it as a cycle, because all these parts relates to each other, and we can't have any project without following these steps. As I mentioned, I've already mentioned them previously, but it's good also just to follow the design or the graph here. So situation analysis, assessments, project design planning framework, monitoring and evaluation plan, M&E, project budget, project implementation and monitoring, and then the final evaluation and dissemination of lessons learned is a very important cycle, and we should really always try to have it in our projects or in developing and designing our projects. If we say why it's important, if we ask this question, why it's important for us to have this procedure or to design a project. Why? First, we have accurate identification of the problem and its causes. So without having the situational analysis and studying the community that I'm serving, we would not have a clear idea about the problem itself. So that's why we should, if we really follow these steps, we would have an accurate identification of the problem and its causes and its consequences. And later on, I'm going to show you why it's important to know the problem. But not just the problem, we need to know the causes and the consequences of this problem. Also, we need to, why it's important, recognition of the community's real and perceived needs. And also this, we're gonna have it through the needs assessments. We need to identify, we need to know more the community who we are serving. We need to know what they want. It's not just about developing a project that would serve, for example, a group of people, or it's about developing a project who's gonna serve those people, but the feedback should come also from them. I should not be just the external person who come and implement and finish the work and go. No, all the projects should start from understanding the needs of those groups, the needs of those communities, and then to start designing my project. So always it's very important to understand these real needs of those communities. Also, why, when I say why, by doing these analyses, and especially if I'm talking about stakeholder analysis, and we're going to see this later, it's important because I'm going to have the involvement of the communities in the project design implementation. Those stakeholders, if I more understand them, understand what they are, their work, their history, their culture, their beliefs, their values, for them it will be an addition for me, because they will be more involved, because they're gonna see that this project was mainly from based on them, based on their participation and their involvement. So the more involvement will be from the community itself. Also, if I follow this type of cycle, I'm going to have the timely monitoring and evaluation to show progress toward objectives and to allow problems to be detected and corrected before they become reversible. So that's why it's very important to always have this evaluation and monitoring in order to see if there's any mistake, if there's any problems during the process or during the project. I can detect it and have the kind of corrective procedures before they come irreversible. Also, something very important to consider before moving on with the analysis, type of analysis that I'm going to do, and this is something very important for us as project managers, and to know exactly what type of characteristics the project manager should have. Always, the project manager should take ownership of the project that he's implementing, always should be a motivator and diplomatic, always should be lead by example and delegate effectively, he should be authoritative, not authoritarian, good communicator, also proactive, not reactive, manages by data and facts, not uninformed optimism. So this is also something that we need for us to know about the project manager, what would be the characteristics, and try to always develop ourselves, gain skills in order to make sure that we are developing our project managerial skills. If we start with before moving, just if we little bit talk more, I want to tell you more about the assessment type of assessments. Also, we as I mentioned, we identify the assessments and what type of assessments we want to run. We have a very important component, which is the analysis. Yes, we start here into the first the analysis phase, which is the situational or the situation analysis. And this would be the first component of our analysis stage. And this stage would have more than one component, but this would be the first one to understand the situation, to understand the community, to understand where we are implementing this type of work. So a successful project is one that was designed, as I mentioned, based on a good understanding of the community conditions and identifies the problems preventing in community from, of course, achieving the long range goals. And community conditions could include aspects of that community. It could be demographics, it could be history, it could be values, it could be cultures, it could be related to the economic situation of that country, of that region, political aspects, technological aspects. So we try to understand all aspects that is related to this community, and this is what we call situation analysis. Any plan, here we're talking about projects, but whenever we're talking about any plan in any sector, always we start these plans with situational analysis, with learning and understanding more about the community that we want to serve. So a situational analysis, we could also call it community assessment, can be conducted to identify the problems and determine which adverse current community condition a project will address. So that's why sometimes we may start our project with having an idea about what problem is there, and we have, for example, we want to proceed in developing our work, but also sometimes during the analysis situation, you may amend your thoughts, the previous thought that you have, because you discovered new things that relates to this problem, and you think that you need to tackle it as well. So even if you have a specific problem previously and you identify this problem, it's very important to run these steps and to not miss any of these steps. So this, as I mentioned, this situational analysis would help us to identify more about the problems the problem that we need to solve or to tackle, and also learn more about the conditions or the community conditions that we have there. Situation analysis, as we mentioned, is conducted by using all available data, such as national statistics, research. We can do our own research, or we can look at other researches that been already done in this aspect in this covering this issue or this challenge that we are talking about. We could also develop our own methods, such as surveys, structured interviews, semi-structured interviews. So we have meetings, face-to-face meetings. So we have different types of methodologies, different types of tools, but the most important thing that to get as much information as I can about this community or this region that serving or trying to implement project in there. So there are, as I mentioned, there are several methods of conducting the situational analysis, and different methods are appropriate for different situations. We need to take that into consideration, that depending on the problem or the challenge that I'm talking about, I can identify exactly what tools and what methodology I have to use. Then also it's important that to mention that before beginning a community assessment, it can be helpful also to make a list of the pieces of information you are trying to find, the sources of each piece of this information, and the means of gathering each piece of the information. And we can here maybe in the other slides I'm going to mention, we can have a kind of table where we put all these things. For example, we can put information, what information I'm trying to get, what would be the potential sources to get this information, or what would be the methods that I'm going to use in order to get these information. And this kind of table, I'm going to show it in later stages. So this all, we should also highlight that all of the information you gather during a community assessment is valuable and can be used as a basis for defining a problem and determining the goal, objectives, and activities for your project. So this is something that always we should keep remind ourselves, that this is the basis for our project. This is the basic for our the basis for our work. The second type, or the other component of the analysis stage, what we call is the stakeholder analysis. Okay, stakeholder analysis, it's more about identify all those groups who have a significant interest in the potential projects. So any group, either it could be voluntary groups, it could be clubs, it could be community centers, it could be other NGOs, institutions, universities, any groups or organizations who have a significant interest in this project. I have to have them on board. I have to learn more about them, to see exactly what they've already done regarding this challenge or regarding this problem, and try to build. Sometimes I may build on other previous work, or sometimes I may start something from the beginning, because I can see that it's not that much linked to what I'm developing. But it's a very important always to understand those stakeholders, identify them. First, I have to identify them, and then start to learn more about their work, learn more about their activities. So we have to investigate their respective roles, different interests, motivations, incentives, relative power, capacity to participate, strength, and weaknesses. And sometimes, as you know, all organizations, they would have strengths and weaknesses. So it's very good for us to look at other organizations. So we try to focus on the we try to help each other. Sometimes we have a weakness in this part of field. For example, we don't have the skills to train, or so it's very important always, as I mentioned, to start knowing those stakeholders, start knowing those organizations, and to build our collaboration and our partnerships with these organizations. And together we can develop a more stronger application or a more stronger projects, because we have more than one partner working in this project. And really at the moment, it's if we're talking about grants and we're talking about these applications, your application would be much stronger if it has more than one partner, especially if we're talking about local partners, because maybe in the previous seminar I mentioned how the localization is very important aspects of any development work. So also integrating those local partners is a huge addition to your application and to your project. And always we should look into build the capacity of those organizations. Yes, it could be their first, for example, their first project, or for example the second project, but it's good also to see what is their strengths and try to have them on board, and to have this kind of joint proposal or joint collaboration or joint project with them. So at the end of this stakeholder analysis, we interpret the findings of the analysis and we incorporate relevant information into project design. So this would be later on how I rely on this information to further on develop my work. As I mentioned, gather information. This table would be very beneficial to me if I put a kind of in the information required, what type of information I would need for my project. I would put it sort of information. What would be the source of information? It could be from the government documents. It could be from. So I need to know exactly from where I could get this type of information. Means, as I mentioned, means we have a different tools. We have different methodologies to get these information, and a very important aspect for us to focus on that I can get these information through the surveys, to develop our own questionnaires, to develop our own meetings, focus groups with those communities. It could be observation. I could observe a community and also write my notes and develop a document based on these observations. So we have different tools, but the most important thing that I need to collect all the information about this community or this issue that I want to tackle. So all the information is valuable and can be used as a basis, as I mentioned. The second, the third one, for talking about the analysis, also we have the data analysis and needs assessment, and this is a very important component as well from my for my project. I need to know more the community. I need to understand the needs. What is the needs in that community? And this would be the basis for my project. So this would be form the basis of the project conceptualization, helping to identify a problem, the causes, the consequences, and exploring the breadth of the problem. So that's why it's very important also to focus as much as we can on this need assessment to identify all these needs. And I mentioned what tools we can use. This also data analysis and the needs assessments, as I mentioned before, we have to identify political, infrastructure, social, cultural, everything related to this community. Here, key points, maybe key points. I've already mentioned a lot of these points, but a successful project is one that was designed based on a good understanding of the community conditions and identifies the problems preventing the community from achieving its long-range goal. And something to mention that whatever application or proposal or project we are developing, it's very important to have these documents and to submit them with your proposal as a appendix to show exactly what type of methods you already followed in order to get this information. Because the donor or the person who are reviewing your proposal, he needs to know how you get this information from the field. So you need to mention, you need to submit all these documents that helped you to understand this community. And this will be, as I mentioned, a good point for them to know that you are not just developing and trying to implement different projects. No, it would give them an indication that the whole problem and the whole idea of this project was originated from this type of analysis that you done. So it's very good always to document. Okay, documentation is a very important part of your work to show the donors how you followed this procedure. Already we mentioned about these aspects. let's move to the other component of the analysis stage, which we call the organizational capacity assessments. As I mentioned, analyzing the external environment, which is the community, the stakeholders, the beneficiaries, the needs, what is the exact need, and then we move into a kind of internal side, and we try to study more us, what is the capacity that we have, what is the resources that we have, and we can rely on a very useful techniques which we call the SWOT analysis. And when we say about the SWOT, it's more about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's as I mentioned, it's a very powerful techniques to understand more about us, about our organization. And this is very important, as I mentioned, because there would be a section in the proposal where I have to mention more about me, my strength, and why I'm capable of implementing this project. So this is very important. We have this SWOT. When we say more about the strength and weaknesses, it's more about us internally. What would be the strength that we have that is kind of relates to this project. Also, we have to run the external analysis. It's more about looking at other organizations, what threats I may have in the community that kind of relates to this project. So I look at all aspects of the things that relates to this project. This is what we call the organizational capacity assessments, and we usually run it through the SWOT analysis. My job as a person or as a project management try to convert those weaknesses into strengths, and also try to convert these threats into opportunities by of course having more partners, developing my work. And at the end, I need to have such type of analysis. And now we move to the most important component of the analysis, which is the problem analysis. And this is a very important thing to consider and to follow certain techniques that would help us to identify the problems and the causes and the consequences. And later on, from this analysis, I can identify my objectives. So first, if we define what is a problem, problems are those things that would have to change or be overcome in order to achieve the long-range goals of a socially and economically healthy communities. Problems can be, of course, internal as well as external, and identifying the aspect, the specific problem is critical in designing any successful project. So once you have completed your community and needs assessments, now you can define and describe the problems in this community. So the next step is to select the problem or the problems you wish to address with your project. And the techniques that I'm going to mention now would help you to understand more how to identify also these problems. Of course, we can list as many ideas as you can, and these ideas will directly address the list of problems to be overcome and will become the basis for your problem statements. Later on, also a very important thing to consider is the problem statements. It should describe a critical condition or a set of conditions affecting a defined group of people in a specific place at a specific time, of course. So a problem, as we mentioned, analyzes, identifies the negative aspects of an existing situation and establishes the cause-effect relationship between the identified problem. Here we have the techniques, one of the techniques in order to identify the problems. Before moving in these techniques, just it's very important whenever you develop your problem, it should be addressed, should have a clear relationship to your organization. And this is something very important, that whatever problem I'm addressing, it should kind of relate to your organization's mission, purpose, and the long-term goals. This is very important. Also, we have to have the all the statistical facts, the testimonials, the interviews that would support this problem, that would be an evidence of having this problem in that community. This is very important for us to know. Also, as I mentioned, while you are while you have these stages in identifying the problem, always documentation is a very important, and to have all these documents to support later on your narrative and your application. Here we're talking about the problem tree. As I mentioned, this is one of the very well known technique in order to understand the core or major problems in any society. We kind of describe the problem in a tree. We at the middle, we have the problem itself, as you can see now in the photo in the left hand side. We have the problem, and this is the center of that tree. We have here the core problem that we want to address. Down in the roots, we have the causes. Okay, causes. Here, why something happened, why this problem happened. So we have to identify the reasons for these for this problem in specific. At the top, or where's the leaves, we have the consequences, or what we call the effect of having this problem. Why? What happened because of this problem? What for example, what consequences the community are suffering from because of this problem? So we have to identify. We have, for example, a chart, and we identify the problem, and then we try to have such of brainstorming, focus groups, as I mentioned, by integrating the community, by having other stakeholders who would really help us to identify the causes and the roots of such a problem, and later on would help us to develop our work plan and our project plan. So this is the problem tree. Some also, maybe I will with the documents that I've already sent to you, you would have examples of such technique. It will tell you more about some problems and how we identified the causes and the effects. This technique is very helpful for me, because later on I'm going to use this tree to develop my objectives and to develop my activities. So it's very important to do this task and to identify this tree, what we call problem tree, because later on I'm going to use it to develop my later plans. And later on I'm going to show you how to transfer or how to convert this problem tree into what we call objective tree. So this is what we call the problem tree, and it's how we're going to develop it. We move forward into the next stage, and here, after we identify, we did all the needed work in order to identify the problems, study the community, having a clear information about all the stakeholders, the needs that is there. Now we start into planning our project, planning and designing the project. Okay, and this stage would not happen before the previous stage. So I should always start with the first one, do all the assessments, all the analysis, identify my problem, and then I start to plan and design my project. So if we start with project planning, what do we mean by a project planning? Project planning involves a series of steps that determine how to achieve a community or organizational goal or a set of related goals. Okay, so we have a series of steps. Project planning framework is an important step in designing a project, and 80% of time should be used to plan the project and 20 to the package the grant application. So the analysis side and the planning side, it's all would take almost 80% of my time, and the rest would be to write my application, to fill to fill the exact what the exact donor would need, because as you know, different donors had different applications, but roughly it would have the the same principles of project management. So if I really follow these steps and develop those plans and those all those analyses and charts, it would make my job easy just to fill the application and to get the grant for this project. Importance of project planning. Why do I need to plan? Maybe I will not focus a lot on these principles because we don't have that much time. So maybe let me focus more on the practical aspects of the project planning. But you would have you already have those slides, and you can rely to read more about why do I need to spend that much time on planning and on designing my project. The first stage of here, when we're talking about planning, first I need to determine and to set my objectives. So as I mentioned, while problems analysis present the negative aspect of an existing situation, here the analysis of objectives present the positive aspect of a desired future situation. So this is why I was telling you that we need to convert the problem tree into objective tree. So all these objectives, how I'm gonna develop and design or write my objectives, it should come from the problems that I've already have from my problem tree. So the project usually the project goal is a basic description of the purpose of the project, and it's a kind of reduction or resolution of the problem that we identified in earlier stages. The project goal should reflect positive changes in the set of conditions desired by the community after the problem is addressed. So here we start with here in this slide, I'm showing you how we can convert this problem tree into objective tree. And here are a kind of example of problems. And we can see we have the roots at the downside part, what would causes for this problem. And then we have the consequences on the top hand side, on the top side of the first graph. On the right hand side, we can see more how we convert those problems into objectives, into outputs, into activities to solve this problem. So this is a very important example just to see how we can use our problem tree into converted into objective tree, because as I mentioned, any projects, whatever the goal, whatever objective of this project, mainly it happened because it want to solve a problem. So that's why all our projects should be rely on the problems that we discovered in that community, and based on that we develop our own objectives. Just something to mention also, usually the community and funding source want a clear picture of what will be accomplished by this project. It will be how it will accomplish, and how will know you have how well when you have accomplished it. So later on also I'm going to see how I'm going to develop the indicators in order to see and to let the donor know how I'm going to measure my work and measure my deliverables. A project only have one of any project may have, of course, one goal, but there can be several objectives. So it's not just one goal which I'm gonna try to implement. It's gonna be several goals from these different from these problems. And also, as I mentioned, the clearer, the more concise and more specific your objective are, the easier it will be to implement your project, and the easier it will be for a funder to understand your project approach. So you want to develop all these plans for yourself, but also in order to write it in your application and to let funder know exactly what you are going to do. A very good technique or a very good strategy to rely on is the what we call the SMART objectives. A very good strategy whenever we develop our projects. It's very important to rely on this strategy, which is specific. And when we say SMART, it is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and result oriented, time bound. So it's a very important principles to follow whenever we are developing our project, our objectives. And when I say specific, that means has a specific action verb. Always it's good, for example, to start these objectives with strengthen, develop, teach, implement. So always start with action verbs. That would really helpful, and that would let us exactly know what we're gonna do, and also state what you will do to achieve your goal and meet your identified need. When we say, so that's why it's always should be specific. When I say measurable, the objective must include measurable outcome. Okay, measurable outcome, and describe measurable changes in the community condition, including social, cultural, and environmental, economic, and governance condition. So depends exactly what is the problem and what is the issue. I should have to have measurable outcomes. Okay, so it will be easier for me to measure if I really did achieve all these things that I'm talking about. Always I have to have numbers to evaluate my work, and for the donors to know exactly what I want to do. Achievable, achievable. That means that always those objectives should be realistic and attainable, something you can expect to achieve given your valuable resources and project strategy. So this is very important aspect. We say relevant and results oriented. Your objective should address your project goal. Of course, it should address your project goal and therefore the long-term goal of your organization. Okay, relevant is very important to be relevant to your things. And the last thing is time bound. The objective should reflect a time period in which it will accomplish. So whenever we develop those objectives, I should give a time frame for this objective by 2020, by December 2020, by so it's very important to have this time frame in order for me to evaluate myself, to monitor myself, and also for the donors to know exactly when you're gonna accomplish your work. Okay, very important to have this time frame in our objectives as well. Finally, so as we mentioned, the project planning should provide details of the major activities in the and we have kind of logical consequences of those objectives, especially if we are having more than one objective. So we have to have a logical consequence between those objectives. Later on, after we have our own objectives, we determine the objectives that we want to develop, which was based on the problem tree. Now we want to have them all in one place, which something we call the log frame matrix. Okay, the log frame matrix or the log frame work, the log frame form. So this one is one of the very well-known matrices for the development projects, and many of the international agencies request at the moment to submit this kind of matrix, which we call the log frame. Also, in my the documents that I've already shared with you, I've shared with you an example of such matrix. With I think the project there on hygiene, focus on hygiene and wash. So maybe that would give you an indication of how would a matrix look like if we're talking about look frame. Also here in the other slides, I'm showing you an example of such matrix. But and one of the documents that I've sent you, it's from Bond look frame matrix. It's a very comprehensive document and is a very beneficial for you to look at, because I mentioned and what we mentioned at the beginning, this 1 hour or 1.5 hour training program would not let us give you all the information, and I'm not expecting you to develop your own look frame matrix directly after this session. It's a kind of comprehensive. It has there's so much information, so maybe it's good to read all the documents that I've already shared with you, especially the one from Bond, which explain in comprehensive, in a detailed way, how to prepare your log frame matrix. So if we just mention before starting with the log frame matrix, it's good to let you know that we have an approach, and from where the log frame came. The log frame matrix came from something we call the log frame approach, which is a kind of something similar to the project management techniques, which start from analysis, stakeholder analysis, problem analysis, objective analysis, strategy analysis, and then we develop the log frame. So this log frame, it would be the end result of this log frame approach, and which the steps that we already followed in our in the previous slides that we delivered. So the log frame, generally, the log frame is the logical framework matrix. We call it the logical framework matrix. And as I mentioned, it's a vital part of the worker's skill set. And increasingly, many donors ask for a log frame as part of a funding application. And it has since become a standard approach required by donors for any grant application. So now, as you can, if you already familiar with applying for grants, now the log frame is a very something very common to be requested from the donors. The logical framework matrix, or the log frame, we call it the log frame, is the output of the program design, where you work out how the program activities will lead to the immediate output and how these will lead to the outcome and goal of your project. So in ideal way, a log frame should be flexible and updated frequently. Okay, it should be flexible and updated frequently while you are developing your plan. The simplest, I'm going to show you later on a sample of log frame, but the simplest form of the log frame, it could be 4x4 table with 16 cells, and as I mentioned, different donors have different types of formats, but usually some donors may ask you to develop your own log frame, or sometimes they would have their own log frame matrix, and you just need to fill the cells with the objectives, the outputs, the outcome, the activities, the inputs that you have. Here we have a typical logical frame, and this adapted from Michelson. And in this typical format, we have the narrative summary, as you can see at the top of the table. We have the narrative summary. Under this, we have the goal, which this is the ultimate goal that I want to achieve, the overall aim of this project. And then I have the outcomes or the objectives that I want to achieve. I have then under that we have the outputs, which is the results, which should be within the control of the project management. I have the activities, which is the things which have to be done by the project to produce the outputs. Okay, so this feels I need to fill exactly all these blocks in order to give the donor exactly what I'm gonna do. So activities will lead to achieve my outputs. The outputs will lead to achieve my outcome, and my outcomes ultimately will achieve my goal. At the down of this table, we have the inputs. And here we have all the resources that I would need for this project. I would have the budget, I would have the time frame. So we have kind of what exactly I would need, all the inputs that I will put in order to accomplish this project. Means of I have the indicators. Indicators is very important also to look at, to see those indicators. What would how I'm gonna measure these objectives, how I'm going to measure how to make sure that this output is already done. So I have to have these measures to show if projects, for example, output are being delivered, to show if the project being made toward achieving the objectives. So we have those indicators. We have means of verifications, and this kind of source of information and methods used to show fulfillment of the goal. And on the right hand side of this table, I have the assumptions, and here I can put any important events, conditions, any kind of challenges, issues that is beyond the project's control, which would be necessary for maintaining the progress toward the goal. So this is very important to take all these assumptions into consideration and to have them there. Could be risks, could be challenges, could be important things. So I have to have them all there. And as I mentioned, we will have we have here example of such a look frame. Maybe I will not because I don't have that much time. Maybe just I've already sent this to you, so you would have time to review it in more details and to see exactly what type of project or problem you are going to solve, and try to implement kind of similar try to use this approach in order to develop your own log frame. So after we develop this this kind of comprehensive log frame matrix, and we know exactly what we are going to do, what we're going to achieve, what activities we want to run. It's very important now to start, and it's a kind of linked. Okay, we don't want, whenever we are studying the project, we don't want to think that it's separate phases. As I mentioned, it's all relate to each other. So with this log frame, we have this column we call the indicators. So this indicators also, it's a kind of part of the other stage, which is the monitoring and evaluation. So it's all the steps is a kind of link to each other, and by the end of the project, we have to make sure that this log frame table is completed, and we have all the needed indicators to measure our work. So we move now to the monitoring and evaluation. As I mentioned, monitoring and evaluation is a part of project cycle and should be designed during the project development stage. Okay, this is very important to consider. Monitoring is the routine tracking of a project's activities by measuring on a regular, ongoing basis whether planned activities are being carried out. Okay, and a project can be monitored at any level. So we should always have that in mind, that the project can be monitored at any level, such as the inputs, outputs, the outcomes. So we have to measure and evaluate the whole components of the project. And the purpose of monitoring, of course, will change from one level to another. If we have a few steps we could rely on in order to develop and to design and to implement our monitoring and evaluation plan. Always we have to review the project and to revise the project objectives in order to identify the best indicators and the best measures in order to evaluate our project. Also, we have to define the purpose and scope of the monitoring and evaluation plan. As I mentioned, we have to select the indicators and the criteria to do this evaluation. We have to also collect the needed data that we want in order to know exactly what we want to measure. Also, we need to prepare, of course, make decisions on monitoring and or evaluation, find it to take appropriate actions. Also, we have to have that in place in case there was something wrong with them or something we couldn't achieve something. We have to have alternative scenarios. So also we have to have that in the monitoring and evaluation plan. Also, we have to have follow-ups, a work plan of follow-ups actions, and to have it always on there. So this is kind of steps we can rely on to implement our monitoring and evaluation plan. As I mentioned, indicators, which is part of the log frame matrix, is a very important component, and it's not easy to develop these indicators. So we have to follow a certain principles in order to develop our indicators. For example, here we have the project objectives. I'm giving you here a kind of example. If the project objective is to reduce the rate of acute infections in the community, so always I need to look at 5 principles, which is quality, the target group, place, quantity, and time. Okay, to look at these whenever I'm developing my indicators. When I say quality, I'm looking at the nature of the indicator. Okay, when I say the target group, I'm talking about the groups that I'm dealing with, the beneficiaries. For example, infection rates reduced among school children. So I have to identify those groups who I'm talking about. I have to identify also the place. For example, infection rates reduced among children of village Z. So I have also to identify the place or the region which I'm talking about. With the quantity also, I have to have the rates, the percentage. For example, infection rates reduced among children of village Z by 45%. And this is really a very important to take it into consideration. I have to have numbers with these indicators, and I can't evaluate my job unless I have such numbers. Always we are talking about measurable indicators, measurable impact. So in order to have a measurable impact, I have to have a measurable indicators. Okay, so that would help me to really say that my project was a successful project, and we can use it as a success story. It's really start from here, from developing your indicators and achieving those indicators and fulfilling those indicators. We have to take the time. Also, time should be taken into consideration. For example, infection rates among children of villages reduced by 45% by December 2020. So also I have to have this time frame. Then after we do all these kind of developing the log frame matrix and having this monitoring and evaluation plan, we reached a very important phase of our project, or a step of the project development, which is developing the budget for this project. Developing the budget, of course, the budget reflects the cost necessary to perform the activities of the project. Always, I should have must be reasonable and tied to the project objectives and work plan. Always, whenever I do the budgeting, I should look at the objectives. I should look at the activities, and to make sure that the budget really linked with these activities. Okay, and this is a very important component of my project and of my application writing. Looking at the budget, for any reviewer, he needs to see the link between your work plan and the budget that you already developed. So the budget should not be prepared until the organization's policies, priorities, and plans have been established. So after I establish all the previous steps, or I run the whole previous steps, now I can fully understand my project and the activities I'm gonna run. Now I am capable of setting my budget and finalizing my budget. Always, as I mentioned, without clear goals and objectives, financial projections cannot be made, nor should budgeting substitute for planning. So always, it's a very important to look at these things. It's so whenever we have this budgeting thing, there we have a few principles to take it into consideration. We have the available resources, the regulations, scope, quality, and method of service, volume of activity, and cost elements. So this is a very important principles to look at and to take it into consideration while we are doing our budget. We have a kind of list of questions it's good to look at while we are developing our budgeting. First, what is the staff time required to complete the project? Will consultants be needed for the project? What travel is necessary to perform all activities? Will equipment be needed to perform the scope of work? What supplies will be needed by the project? What other costs will be incurred to complete all activities of the projects? And also, as I mentioned, with the files that I've sent, it would really be very beneficial for you all to look at it, and they really identify what type of cost any project would have if it's come to infrastructure, if it's come to materials, to training, to human resources. So it's very good to look at the documents that I've already shared with you and to see exactly what type of cost you would need to consider while preparing your budget. Project schedule, as I mentioned, very important to have a time frame for your project, to have a time frame to start and to finish this project and to achieve your goals. Very important to have this time frame, as I mentioned, to mention it in different part of my project. Something to also to look at, and some organization would really request us to develop this type of strategy to be as part of our application, which what we call the sustainability strategy. Sustainability strategy, it's more about thinking what aspects of your project you will want to continue after the program ends, how this project will continue after you finish this 1 year project or this 2 year projects, who's gonna run this project, who's, for example, partners that would be part of this project. For example, some projects you would have the government part of this project and they will run this project after you. For example, sometimes a local organization would take this project and run this project after you. Or for example, sometimes you would have the internal resources that make you eligible or make you capable to run this project after. So always you have to have that strategy, sustainability strategy, that what aspects of your program you will want to continue after this grant finish or after the time scale finish. So we always say that sustainability refers to the ability of the project to continue once the initial grant or external source of funding has ended. And as I mentioned, this is very important thing to consider, and a lot of the applications would need you to fill this section, which more about the sustainability of your project. The last part of our seminar today is more about the risk management. Risk management, as I mentioned also, is a very important component. And as you can see in the log frame, we already have that section where we put the assumptions, which it could be challenges or risks. But so it's very already in our log frame, we should have it there. Okay, yes, here we have it as a steps, but all these information that we got it from the risk assumptions and the risk analysis, also we have to fill it on in that log frame. And as we mentioned, every project has the potential to run into challenges that can impede progress and prevent or delay successful completions. So always we have to have this contingency plan that will help us to identify and prepare for potential challenges that may cause your project to be late in starting up or fall behind schedule or over budget. So always we have to have such a contingency plan as well. Okay, maybe also developing contingency plan as a fallback position, or just in case leaves in a better preparedness to handle challenges, and also identifying potential challenges and planning ahead. You will be more likely to overcome such challenges with minimal disruption and cost to your project. Here I've mentioned some probable challenges that may face you during your project. It could be related to staff. It could be related to the scope that you already that you already designed, and what it was too ambitious. So this could be a kind of challenge. Sometimes it could be the travel, expertise. So we have a list of different challenges that we as a non-profit organization we may face during our implementation. Always, as I mentioned, the good start of your project and good analysis would help you somehow to prevent these challenges, or to at least to minimize these challenges as much as you can, if you really did what you need from the beginning. The last part of any project, which is a very important component of my project writing, is the project summary. And usually this would be, as I mentioned, with your application, you have to have that part of your grant application to write the summary of your project. And this summary is it will be the first read by an application viewer. So it's very important to show exactly that your project deserves to have this grant. This project summary usually should not exceed one single space page and should reflect the essence of the entire project. So in this summary, you should have the clear statement of the priority area the application is submitted under. You should have pertinent facts about the community and the population to be served. You would have 2 or 3 facts. And these facts could be from your research, it could be from previous research, it could be from your analysis that you did. So whatever the source of this information, but you have to have these facts about this community that you are serving. We have to have a brief description, a brief discussion of the problem that exists in that community, relating it to the fact you presented in the first paragraph about your community. And this include, of course, your problem statements. We have to have the project goal, the main goal of the project, the ultimate goal that I'm going to achieve. Also, I have to list the in this summary the kind of objectives that I'm going to achieve as well, what type of indicators I may have to measure my work, and also who I'm going to serve, the beneficiaries, the number of people to be served, and the most important part is the impact by this project, what I'm going to achieve at the end of this project.
So this was the final slide in our seminar today. And this, as I mentioned, is a very important component of my project, and a very and I need to take like to take consideration into the whole items that I need to include in this summary, because as mentioned, this would be the first thing that application reviewer would look at.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hannah. I am speechless. I can't say anything. As a project cycle management trainer who used to work with European Union for a long time, we used to conduct such kind of training session in 2 days and 3 days implementation with divided sessions, especially for the project cycle management, project designing, even just problem tree. To explain the problem tree, it just takes half-day session for different projects and for different challenges, for different problems in the society, by the way. What you did, it was really comprehensive and outstanding effort to make sure to put everything on the table. And the most important thing is, as you already stated, that we are not expecting you, our young volunteers, to understand everything within just one presentation. But as a social worker, what I used to tell always when I used to be volunteer and also trainer, if we made you confused, this is the most important thing, that when you feel that you are confused, it means that you are going to dig into, you are going to discover more. Thank you so much for this amazing and great confusion, Dr. Hannah. I'm sure that they feel that they got so many information, but the most important part is they are kind of confused. This is what I am really looking for. And the most important part within the Dr. Hannah presentation, once you find any kind of available fund, once you just open that fund and just say that apply, you will see all these questions by just going and checking this information that Dr. Hannah is provided to you. Because, for example, for the project summary, project goal, project target group, the most important part again, the time frame, when you're gonna start, how you're gonna execute, and also budget in line with that time schedule is really important, because the evaluation committee, that reviewer is going to check everything to see the whole picture. What Dr. Hannah was trying to make sure is that there is a problem that you would like to solve, but how you are going to solve that problem, with including the partners, with including the specific solution, with the exact period of time, and also how you're going to execute the budget that you received, and how many human resources. The most important part also that I really like it, regarding the characteristic of good project manager, like how or she or needs to be really careful regarding motivator and being diplomatic, because she or he needs to deal with different parties and bodies. And the receiving fund is amazing, but it's also huge responsibility that you need to inform the donator and funds monthly. So there is a reporting process. That's why implementation and monitoring is really important. How Dr. Hannah is made sure that monitoring is possible in every stage of the project implementation process. And also, I really agree that the 80% of the project is to get ready all of these causes. 20% is really the execution process. Because if you make your, let's call it your truck on 4-wheel, like very sure, the path and the way is going to be very easy. This 80% is to make sure that that donor or fund, that you are eligible within your organization capacity, and also you are expert on the topic, and you know how to solve that issue with inclusion of partners in a specific period of time. They just would like to make sure that this capability of yours and your team and also your organization, and also with that specific cause. And I used to always mention, since we don't have time, you didn't put it, but there's a project life cycle. As also she mentioned a bit, that once you receive the fund, everything is perfect and you are here. You got the fund after really day and night. You wrote the project. By the way, if the fund is bigger, the application and submission of process takes maybe 1 month or 2 months. 2 months. It depends on your readiness and what you are aiming to get it. And after that hard time, you receive the fund and everything is amazing and going well, then you go to the execution process. But project life cycle is always like this. You have a bad days, dark nights, and you have a really good sun that everything is nice. So suddenly that you find the target group and everyone is ready, but technically things are changing and you lost your target group and you need to create another target group to be implement the project. So project life cycle is like this. Naturally, as a good project manager, you are becoming to expert on how to manage the risk, because this is the crisis and risk management is going to be the most important part, because projects is always like this, because it's not only depending on you.
Yes.
There are target groups, there are partners, there are technical facilities that you should be careful. If it's a kind of like a health project, there are different issues that you should be careful. And also there are official permissions that you need to take care of. This is another point. You do everything is great. You inform them, but there are different bureaucracy that you should be careful. So thank you so much for this amazing and brilliant presentation. What I'm going to do as a trainer of PCM, I will pray for our volunteers. I do hope that some of them is going to become project management cycle trainer, and then project cycle management trainer, and then they will understand one day what you did in just 1.5 an hour was just miracle to explain all of these things to them. But this is really important because I want to give little explanation. I used to be a Turkish language teacher, by the way. When I got first fund, because there was so many issues that I would like to do, and I was volunteered to so many different programs, and I used to work with cancer children and orphans and different disadvantaged groups. I really wanted to see what's happening there. Then I just recognized that being social worker is like very interesting, but I was just volunteer. I never looked at that one day is going to be my professional work. Then we established our youth NGO with my friends. Then we applied the project. Then when we got first time our first fund, it was like almost 100,000 euro or something like this in 2011. And so we were so happy, but entire year we just work on the youth unemployment report of Turkey, and there were so many crises and problems. Now, if you can just see that I'm working in an international organization as a social worker, being volunteer and also trying to write a project is going to give you another way to find your employment process. Because in the world, I don't know what you are thinking, Dr. Anna, there will be issues and matters always, and we will always need social workers, project managers. So there is no university for this, because
Yes.
this is exactly the field work. You need to be in the field, and you need to be in the cause of the process, how to write a project, because you can find everything else, but you need to understand how the field is going. So there is no university for this. There is no master for this. You need to be just a self-driven person to understand it, to see. Then it can be also your professionality, because whoever I met from the project management field, everyone like who is engineer, doctor, or philosopher or psychologist, but they became social worker just to discover the world. And also I want to just like put a little water in your ears that is going to also make you uncomfortable, that why not, maybe there is another option for you to have another opportunity, because this is another way how you can be also really useful for your society and also humanity. So there are some questions I would like to direct you from the chat box. And also, please, if you have any question, raise your hands and you can ask your questions. Let me just see okay. For a medium period project, how many day time duration we need to make a project design? From Mr. Shafiq, Afghanistan.
Okay, so we can't, to be honest with you, we can't identify a specific time frame. It depends exactly what is the problem that you have, where exactly you're going to implement this project. So I can't give exact time frame
for designing your project. It could vary from 1 month, it could be from 2 months, because sometimes you don't have any idea about this community, you don't have any idea about the cultural background there, the beliefs. So it depends exactly what information you already have, where you're gonna implement your work, and then that would give you a kind of time frame that would be suitable for you as well. So I can't say that you have to have 2 weeks to develop your project. It depends also on your time, the resources that you have. So all these things you can decide on that part.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hannah. We have another question, is that why some funding projects are not successful? Most probably he is asking what is the common mistakes of the projects that we are applying and not successful. And he wanted to give an example. For example, your organization is looking fund from European Union. How your projects can be successful?
Maybe just for projects, I would say missing the first steps of analyzing the situation, analyzing your beneficiaries' needs, analyzing the problem, the exact problem, maybe really later on would lead to failure projects. So I would say the analysis stage is really important in order to make sure we would not have any failure stories later on. So always focus on the analysis side, to be within the resources that you have. Also, don't be that much ambitious about delivering, about achieving. Always think about the resources that you have within the budget limit that you have. So this is maybe something would prevent you from having any failure stories. Maybe I can't think of any failure story, but maybe something that I can mention here is relates to implementing development projects in different regions in the global south. I don't want to mention exact organization or any name, but really to miss the analysis side and to involve stakeholders from the community lead to those community refusing the project, refusing implementing this project, and to stop this project from implementing. Even they start with this organization and with this project in specific, they've already started the infrastructure, they've started a lot of building work, but because they did not really study the situation, study the government policies and the stakeholder, they did not involve them from the beginning of the project. They reach a stage where the community refused this project, refused to complete implementing this project, and it was a failure. It was really a failure story.
Yeah, it's really important example, by the way. We always thinking about how great we are designing, but the important part also, the harmony between the society that we are trying to create that solution is also really unique, that we need to be really careful. Thank you so much for the great question, Suleiman. And the next question is going to be a video question. Tasugi Dongfak is raising hands, and floor is yours, Tasugi. Please.
Good evening to each and everyone, and thank you for the wonderful presentation, Dr. Anan Abana. Your presentation was wonderful, and I wish to say that I have been looking for this moment where I'll meet someone that will explain to me detailedly how a project is designed. I worked with as the assistant project coordinator with the embassy on the displaced population, and it was really difficult conducting the project or ensuring implementation, especially at the level of the logical framework that you did mention in your presentation. In fact, the logical framework is something that has been disturbing me so far as designing a project. So I really wish to know the difference between a logical framework and a log frame. You talked about the log frame. And even in the logical framework, you made mention of many points that I did not really understand. If I start asking the question that are too long, I don't know if maybe you could give me your email so that I really discuss with you personally so much that at the end of the day, I should really be mentored on this issue, please. I wish that you should be my mentor in this slide because I really looked about undergoing or maybe implementing project, and I see you as really someone that is grounded in the field, and it will be so interesting to me, amazing, exciting for me to be your student. I'll humbly sit for your mentorship, please. I'll really be happy. I'll really be happy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just to answer your question, so the logical framework is the log frame matrix. So we're talking about the matrix. It's the log frame matrix. I can totally agree that really it's not something that easily we can understand from one slide or from 10 minutes talk. That's why really maybe I would encourage you to look in specific for the documents, the bond document that I think Sirin will share it with you if she is not already shared, but maybe she will share it with you as well, with all the participants. And that documents will really give you a comprehensive information on how to develop this kind of log frame. This log frame would really make your project look more detailed, more familiar to you and to your to the application reviewer. And of course, I'm happy to share with my email with you, and we can discuss this further later on. And I'm sure these documents that Sirin will share would be very beneficial to you. As I said, we don't have that much time now to describe it or to mention more about it, but for sure these documents will give comprehensive details.
So thank you so much, Tashugi, and also thank you so much, Dr. Hannah, for the answer. I have another important question from Malaysia, Narmesh, and is it like, do you think so to put the SDGs in our project objectives or goals is going to add value and advantage while we are writing our project design and any kind of project application?
Yes, 100%. 100%. And really sorry that I missed this point. And thank you so much for mentioning that. It's always maybe when in my previous seminar I focused more on the sustainable development goals and how I can include that in my work here, because we're talking more about the project management. So I thought it's already should be part. So this is one of the main principles that always, whatever objective, whatever goal you are working on, you should follow the sustainable development goals. And these sustainable development goals already have their own indicators, and they already have their own targets. I can use them. The sustainable development goals provide me with an easy way to develop my project and to develop my indicators and my targets. Maybe I would share with you a file that would have it's already online. Maybe you can access it, but maybe also I would share it with you. It's good to study every single one of these SDGs, especially, for example, if you are an education organizations working on the education challenges, I can look directly on SDG 4. If you are a women organization, I can look directly on SDG 5. Health issues, SDG 3. So whatever your organization focus, I can just look at a specific sustainable development goals and try to pick from those indicators and from those targets, and really it will make that will make my job much easier. So always and also that would be an addition whenever I'm sending my application to those donors. For sure they want to see that how my work gonna tackle or gonna achieve those sustainable development goals. So really thank you so much for this comment, and 100%
I should include these sustainable development goals, and I should mention in my brief about my organization which of these sustainable development goals me as an organization are working toward.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question and so for the brilliant answer. And also, Dr. Hannah, just to add another perspective, it is also, do you think so, is it really important to check any kind of international organizations that, like, for example, European Union funds or United Nations or the Commonwealth, the other international organizations? They have also really important priorities and the missions and vision. For
Yes.
example, for a long time for the European Union, it was really important, the global citizenship. And all the programs and the projects like was focusing on the global citizenship and rising the European citizenship was really important. So also the most important part when you're analyzing the situation and problem, when you're trying to make sure that your cause is really strong, you need to also align with their priorities as an international organization, even European Union or United Nations, like how SDGs are really important for United Nations. Under the EU, there are important priorities that they are every year, like making their fields and the areas that they are going to accept the funds. So you should be very careful with the language of these international organizations, because with the European Union, there are different type of language of application. With the United Nations, there's a different language of application. But once you start to dive into, you are going to understand which kind of words and which kind of priorities that you are going to strengthen your cause. So
Yes.
also, we would be so happy, like, for example, I have an organization and I would like to see at the moment in international arena the available funds. I would like to check call for applications, like available funds, available grants for the international organizations. So just like which one of those applicable, because at the moment there are so many funds available, especially focusing on COVID-19 and also effect of COVID-19. And like, is there any kind of like a website that they can look at it? You can suggest?
Maybe I can't suggest a specific website, but as you mentioned, depends on each country. For example, sometimes there's donors, international donors, like USAID, European Union, all these things. Sometimes we have another donors, which, for example, embassies. So depends on what region we are dealing with or where we are exactly. We have to look at the exact institutions that provide us with the such open these applications. Sometimes maybe it's my job to do a little bit more search. Now at the moment we have the private sector partnerships as well, so it's not always me as non-governmental organization should wait for those applications to open. I should start also targeting new sector, which is the private sector, the embassies, other organizations. Sometimes I may have established this kind of partnership between other bigger organization, other bigger NGO. So I think that the floor is open. It's not about just focusing on one type or one opportunity, but we have different type of opportunities. We have to start thinking about it. And as you mentioned now with COVID-19, there's a lot of private sector organizations that are willing to fund such initiatives in different regions. So it's very important just to try to know exactly where we are, try to look, to do a little bit of search and start targeting all these organizations.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hannah. There is another question from Oman, Mariam, and she asked that what is your rule of thumb for distinguishing between problems and root problems?
What's your, sorry, what's your rule?
What is your rule of thumb for distinguishing between problems and root problems?
Okay, so I would say the problem is the core thing that I'm dealing with. It's the problem, the core problem. But if I'm looking at the roots, it's more the causes that lead to this problem. Okay, it's more about the causes. It's kind of small things that would it could be behaviors, it could be beliefs, it could be activities in the society that lead to have this problem. And later on, as I mentioned, because when we are converting our problem tree into objectives, these causes or these roots of this tree will be our activities. So that will be more, here we're talking more about changing behavior, changing beliefs, having new, for example, things into the community in order to solve this problem. So that's how we differentiate between the problem. The problem, it's the core problem that we are facing in this community, and it will be the objective that I'm gonna achieve. Okay, this problem will be, I will convert it into an objective, the main objective or the main outcome. But the roots, it will be more about my activities, what I'm gonna do to achieve this outcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, there is another question from Senegal, Papa Banda, and she's asking about more is like a, business model with Canvas. Can you tell us more about how to make a good business model with Canvas? Good business model Canvas, and also how to do a good market research in a project to face any market risk, and are there any online platforms that can help us to study or write the steps of our project? I know this issue is a bit different, but since you are in the field, I'm sure that you have so much information regarding it, if you would like to answer the question, of course.
Okay, so it's a kind of a big question, and it has more than one aspect, but I would say that looking at the materials that I've put, maybe it will give you a very good detailed information on how to really develop your project. When it comes to marketing and developing your marketing strategy and the projects, yes, there's many materials, online toolkits on how you develop your marketing strategy. But one thing to take it always into consideration, that whatever strategy you are thinking of, always we start with the analysis step. Always about analysis. If we're talking about environment, we have the best analysis. We're talking about organization, we have the SWOT analysis, we have the community assessment. So always start with analysis, and then we follow procedures of developing our strategy, developing the tools or activities. So it's a kind of similar here, but it's maybe we have different, of course, aspects. But usually, whatever sector we are dealing with, we have to follow these steps.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hannah. Before just wrapping up our beautiful and insightful session, I also would like to again, once more, express my thanks to Dr. Hannah for being with us today here, especially for such an important topic that is going to give you maybe different opportunity for your life, for your society, even maybe you are going to be the owner of your own organization who is going to do so many different work. And the most important part also, there's a good suggestion. There are different organizations, they are looking for partners from those countries. Maybe as your organization, you are not eligible at the moment to apply for any kind of fund. But as far as I know, which is called OTLAS, OTLAS, this is a partnership funding platform. And for example, I'm applying a project under the European Union in Turkey, but I'm looking for a partner from Morocco. So I just need to go and find a partner, an organization which is working like same missions and the visions like me. So they are not eligible to apply, but they are eligible to be partner of our program. So you can also think that way. So that experience is going to teach you how to run a project with your partner. And also it's going to give you experience, how Dr. Hannah mentioned that once you are talking about your organization capacity, you are going to make sure that you were partnered with several international organizations and you did your job done since you were a partner. So this is another opportunity. Maybe you are not eligible at the moment as a direct applicator, but you applicant, but you will be eligible as a partner. So please try to think about like out of box and try to figure out how you can on the board, how you can be on the board. Even just in the team of that specific funded project is going to give you different idea. Even volunteer of that specific funded project is going to give you different idea. You are going to have a chance to see how the monitoring and evaluation process is going to be happen, how they do the budgetary part, and how they just calculate all process and the months, and how they report to the donors like regularly. This is going to give you insightful experience for sure. And there is a one question for ICYF. I would like to quickly answer that one regarding our entrepreneurship program. That actually what we are doing is our Young Business Hub entrepreneurship program is bringing young startups with investors. Mainly we are receiving their startups if it's late, early stage. It depends on stage. And every year we used to do in Istanbul and also Bahrain, Manama, in different countries with the Startup Summit Entrepreneurship Forum, that where young startups and the investors can meet. So this is mainly how the project runs. I mean, ICWF is technically not given any kind of fund or grant, but we are bringing the investors and the startups on the pitching session. They can meet and they can see how they are going to get funded. Until now, we, thanks to our platform, there are so many startups got funded, and also they are on the process. And the most important point is they are receiving the feedback of the investors and mentors, like what they need for their their startups, and which stage they need to work on it, what they need to do for the business marketing model, etc. So this is how our Young Business Hub is working. Just I wanted to answer. And last question before closing, Dr. Hana, to you is that from Bangladesh, Faiza, I would like to ask, to get international funding, how can a project targeting in local problem have its chances to be selected by international organizations? Should I design the project in a way that can be used to have a global impact later?
No, of course not. So we design a project. Yes, those donors are international donors, but they are funding projects that tackle local issues. So, you are not designing a project that would be suitable for, any type of regions. You are designing a project based on a local scenario, based on a local problem, based on assessment from your local organization, and you apply for those international agencies, and those international agencies will look at your application and will see if you are tackling this problem, and if you have all the facts and figures and the evidences that you did your work of analyzing and all and including all the stakeholders, and at the end you have this problem, and how you're going to tackle this problem, this is how you're going to achieve this problem, they will fund you. So yes, they are looking for interventions that are tackling local problems, and dealing with local communities and integrating local partners from different fields or from different regions.
So thank you so much, Dr. Anna, for the, we know that almost for 2 hours you are with us, and also almost 2 hours our participants are here. So I don't know where we can find such kind of amazing synergy, such kind of amazing gathering. Thank you so much for your patience, Dr. Anna, and your effort and your motivation, and how you are, your desire to explain everything in a really short moment. And thank you so much, our young volunteers, trying to explain and understand everything with your really great questions. I need to underline this important part. And we were so happy to meet you, Dr. Anna, and we were so happy to host you 2 times. And we can, what we feel is that there is an important treasure within you, and we need to be working with you, and we need to go further for the betterment of our young people in global, and also the OIC region, how we can tackle with the important issues by enhancing their skills and developing their skills to write their project, and make sure that they are the owner of that responsibility, and taking the initiative, taking the responsibility, and putting their hands for their own society to tackle with the problem. So as ICYF, we will be doing our best to find the most important empowerment programs that our young people need in the region or out of region, even for the world. And what I can see from this presentation, we were planning to do NGO capacity building in OIC countries, and also with the youth-led organizations. So your presentation made sure that we need to do definitely such kind of empowerment and the development program. And I do hope that we can do on the ground, but however, if we can't do it, we will do online, and we will be always keep in touch with you and try our best to reach out to you with your demands according to your desires as well. Dr. Anna, before closing the session, would you like to have any words, since it's your last session under the volunteering program with our beautiful and handsome young volunteers?
Yeah, thank you so much, Serene. Thank you so much for all the efforts that you've done and the rest of the team during this fantastic program. And really, thank you so much for all the people that are joining, who are really showing that they are really want to learn more. And I think this is our responsibility for us as practitioners or people working on the ground and with all these different aspects is really to try to reach to those people and try to give from all the things, from all the lessons learned, from all the experiences that we get, and try to be always in direct contact with them, as you mentioned, online or through face-to-face trainings. For sure, I'm happy to be part of that initiative because really I believe that we have people who really would like to learn and they would are really working hard to develop themselves. Just maybe we need a kind of support from our side, so for sure we will be there for them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hannah, and thank you for your all important contributions to the society, to the humanity, because I know that you are working for Kenya, Nigeria, for Bangladesh, and now recently you are working for the Jordan experience to understand the Middle East issue. So you are also really important role model for us, that you are striving for the society and doing something for good. And it is not easy to organize, to manage non-governmental organizations, because you need to manage so many different balances economically. Just to sustain the non-profit organizations is not an easy, but it's really important life dream, and it's important mission to make this life really meaningful, and also to make this life to live something for that you can devote and you can diligently work. Thank you so much, and I hope to meet you again. And we are going to close our session today, and it is going to be our last 2 more sessions, and we are going to end our volunteering program on Sunday. And to make sure that once more we wouldn't have come this far without you and without your amazing contributions to the topic. Thank you so much, Dr. Anna.
Thank you so much, Serene. Thank you